Before he became a timeless elf king or a cosmic warlord, Lee Pace was just a tall, quiet kid moving from place to place, never staying long enough to plant roots. Born in Oklahoma in 1979, but raised partly in Saudi Arabia and Texas, Lee didn't grow up chasing the spotlight. In fact, his early life looked nothing like a future Hollywood star's. But sometimes, the quiet ones carry the strongest stories. Lee's father worked in the oil business, which took the family overseas to the Middle East during Lee's formative years. That meant constant change, new schools, new cities, unfamiliar languages. For some kids, it might have been overwhelming. For Lee, it was observation school. He watched people, he listened, and slowly he started figuring out how people worked, how emotions looked on a face. Without knowing it, he was studying for a craft he hadn't chosen yet. Eventually, the Pace family settled in Houston, Texas. It was there that Lee began to take acting more seriously. He attended Klein High School, where his quiet charisma and impressive 6'5" frame made him stand out without trying. He joined the school's theater program, and for the first time, the stage became his comfort zone, a place where he didn't have to explain himself, just become someone else. After high school, Lee applied to the Juilliard School in New York City, one of the most competitive and prestigious acting schools in the world. He was accepted into Group 30, a cohort that included future stars like Tracy Toms and Anthony Mackie. At Juilliard, Lee learned classical technique, stage presence, and vocal control. But perhaps more than anything, he learned discipline, the art of showing up every day and doing the work whether or not anyone was watching. While still at Juilliard, Lee landed early roles in theater, including a notable performance in the Credo Canvas off-Broadway. But it wasn't until 2003 that the industry truly took notice. That year, he starred in Soldier's Girl, an independent film based on a real-life tragedy. Lee portrayed Calpurnia Adams, a transgender woman in love with an American soldier. His performance was delicate, brave, and deeply empathetic. He was nominated for a Golden Globe, an astonishing feat for someone making their screen debut. From that point, Lee Pace's journey truly began not as a heartthrob, not as a blockbuster star, but as an actor with range, subtlety, and a quiet gravity. And for Lee, that was more than enough. After Soldier's Girl, many expected Lee Pace to rise quickly in Hollywood, but the path ahead was anything but straight. Lee refused to be boxed into one type of role. He wasn't chasing fame or teenage heartthrob status. Instead, he gravitated to characters that stirred his curiosity, even if they were smaller, unconventional, or hidden in indie shadows. One of those choices was the visually stunning but narratively oddball drama, The Fall, 2006. Lee starred as a paralyzed stuntman named Roy, who spins fantastical stories to a young girl in a hospital. The film became a cult favorite for its dreamlike visuals and layered storytelling, but it didn't reach mainstream audiences. For Lee, though, it was a conscious decision, pick art over guaranteed visibility. Another turn came with TV Pushing Daisies, 2007-2009. Lee played Ned, a whimsical pie maker who can revive the dead with a touch. This role earned him a Golden Globe nomination and endeared him to a broader audience thanks to the show's playful tone and quirky charm. Yet despite the acclaim, the series only lasted 2 seasons. It became a bittersweet lesson. Critical praise doesn't always equal longevity. Despite the momentum, Lee found himself at a crossroads. Hollywood wanted to put him in fantasy or science fiction roles, fairy tales, superheroes, space epics, but he hedged. He was selective, waiting for roles that felt purposeful and layered. That meant sometimes saying no to projects that would guarantee mainstream exposure, but also meant long periods out of the public eye. Between 2010 and 2014, Lee worked steadily, but mostly in theater, small TV roles, and independent films like Graham Greene's The Line, and voice work for radio dramas. His absence from headline roles led some to question whether he would ever break through again. But Lee saw it differently. This was survival, exploration, and refinement. He wasn't vanishing, he was evolving. And then came Halt and Catchfire, 2014 to 2017. Lee starred as Joe McMillan, a brilliant but volatile tech executive in the dawn of the personal computing era. The show was critically acclaimed, and Lee's performance was praised for its intensity and nuance. Once again, he picked a role for depth rather than spectacle, and it paid off, bringing him into a new chapter of recognition and opening doors for bigger, more mainstream projects. So when we look back at those quieter years, they weren't setbacks, they were strategic moves. Every independent film theater performance or selective audition added layers to Lee's skill. He wasn't avoiding the spotlight, he was preparing to stand in it in his own way. When you think of Lee Pace's career, there's no single star-making moment, no explosive debut that turned him into an overnight household name. But that's exactly what makes his journey so distinct. Lee Pace didn't become famous for one role, he became respected for all of them. Beyond the fantasy worlds and villain roles, Lee returned time and again to theater. He performed in Broadway productions like The Normal Heart and Angels in America, both dealing with the AIDS crisis and human resilience. Critics praised his ability to balance theatrical grandeur with intimate emotion. On stage, Lee became not just a performer, but a presence, someone whose stillness could fill a room. Even in less publicized roles like the gentle biologist in The Keeping Hours or the reclusive artist in Driven, Lee showed a consistency he never phoned it in. Whether center stage or buried in a streaming catalog, he gave every role gravity, thought, and emotion. That's why directors keep coming back to him. He makes even silence feel alive. Lee Pace's portfolio isn't about quantity, it's about integrity. Whether he's fighting elves leading tech revolutions or whispering to ghosts, he chooses work that speaks to him, and when he speaks through his characters, we listen. Lee Pace is stepping into one of his most enigmatic roles yet, in The Running Man, 2025, directed by Edgar Wright. The film, slated to premiere in November 2025, is not a remake of the 1987 version starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Instead, it's a more faithful adaptation of Stephen King's original 1982 novel, which he wrote under the pen name Richard Bachman. The story takes place in a bleak totalitarian America where poverty is rampant and reality television has become a brutal tool of control. Citizens can volunteer for a game show called The Running Man, where they become fugitives. Runners hunted across the country by government-approved assassins called hunters. The main prize survival and enough money to save a loved one. Lee Pace plays Evan McCone, the lead hunter. In the book, McCone is a chilling figure, silent, masked, methodical. He is the embodiment of the state's power and cruelty, but he's not a caricature. He's efficient, intelligent, and deeply unsettling. According to early reports, Wright kept McCone's design close to the book, complete with a gray mask, sunglasses, and military beret. Pace's version is said to be cold, calculating, and near mythic in presence. The film stars Glenn Powell as Ben Richards, the desperate man who volunteers for the deadly game to get money for his dying daughter. Alongside him are Josh Brolin, Coleman Domingo, Michael Cera, Emilia Jones, and others. But McCone is the one character who never reveals his face, and that makes Lee Pace's performance even more fascinating. He must convey everything: intensity, menace, purpose through body language alone. Lee Pace has joked in interviews that playing McCone means no time spent in hair and makeup, but in truth, it's a massive acting challenge. With the mask on, he must rely entirely on posture, movement, and stillness to express authority and threat. The audience won't see his eyes, but they'll feel his presence. Director Edgar Wright is known for his precise visual style and sharp tone, and fans are curious to see how he balances that with King's grim themes. Early trailers show a mix of action, irony, and emotional tension, all underscored by fast-paced editing and immersive sound design. But what stands out most is how seriously the film takes its world, and how real McCone feels within it. For Lee Pace, The Running Man is a rare opportunity to play a silent villain who isn't just evil but symbolic. Evan McCone is not just chasing a man, he's representing a machine, a system, an era. And as always, Lee Pace seems drawn to roles where the surface says little, but the silences speak volumes. Lee Pace isn't the kind of actor who storms onto the red carpet every week or dominates magazine covers. He's the type who lets his characters speak and sometimes scream so he doesn't have to. Behind every role is a man who chooses carefully: depth over fame, challenge over comfort, integrity over trendiness. Let's think back. We started with that quiet kid moving between Oklahoma, Saudi Arabia, and Texas, observing, listening, learning. Then came Juilliard, where discipline became a companion. Then Soldier's Girl, the first real spark. Then a decade-long journey through Indies TV cult hits, big-budget franchises, and Broadway stages. Then McCone's silent, masked, ominous. There's a theme running through all this transformation. Lee Pace transforms physically, emotionally, morally, without forcing us to watch. He doesn't demand our attention. He earns it. When he stands still, we're still drawn to him. When he whispers, we lean in. That's strength. Off-screen, Lee is private, quiet even. He rarely tweets opinions on hot topics, rarely seeks viral moments. Yet you sense his intelligence, his thoughtfulness. Friends say he listens more than speaks. He processes before he acts. It's the same habit that makes him compelling on stage and screen. And then there's his activism, quiet support for arts funding, respect for the LGBTQ+ community, subtle advocacy rather than grandstanding. He's never made headlines for it, but the seeds he plants in interviews and roles in support grow steadily, invisibly, like roots under the soil. Looking forward, the running man is the next step. But whether he's a masked hunter, an elven king, or a tech rebel, Lee Pace's strength lies in his refusal to be predictable. He continues to choose roles that demand something of him, and by extension of us. So here's to Lee Pace, a man who doesn't shine by shouting but by stillness. A man who doesn't build fame with selfies, but with silence. In his art, he lets the story breathe and asks us to lean in. That perhaps is his greatest role of all, being a storyteller who invites us into something deeper. Thank you for following Lee Pace's journey with me, from a quiet boy with a wide view of the world to a disciplined actor who earned every inch of his place, to a master of transformation, and finally to a man who stands behind the mask and lets us feel him through his presence, not his speech. If you enjoyed this journey into the life and art of Lee Pace, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. I've got more actor deep dives, behind-the-scenes tales, and untold stories coming your way. Drop a comment. What's your favorite Lee Pace role? Or which actor should we explore next?